Namaste. Welcome to Sattva's program we have every other Sunday. I'm Dr. Vikram Pattarkine. I'm a member of the Sattva team. We are delighted to have a wonderful, accomplished, and famous guest with us today, Dr. Yash Velankar, whom I will introduce in a couple of minutes. Initially, let us start talking about the Sattva program, what we have. The title of today's talk is Biohacking Our Brain Health, which is being conducted through our initiative called Sattva. This is an initiative for diet purification leading to mind purification, which ultimately helps us realize who we are. That's the initiative we run, myself along with my sisters Pooja Keswani and Saili Pitre. We have participants in our programs who come with us for a journey of 90 days. During this time, we help them with their diet program. We assess what they do currently, what their dietary preferences are, what their patterns are, and gradually take them towards better health, body detoxification, mind purification, and ultimately on the path to self realization, which is the ultimate objective of human existence. We are delighted all of you are here. Initially, I'm going to talk about how diet can help us towards improving our brain's health. Thereafter, Dr. Yash Velankar, who is our guest today, he will talk from his perspective. He is BAMS, qualified Ayurvedic practitioner, postgraduate in psychotherapy and counseling, and MA in philosophy. He describes himself as Ayurved Sattvavajaya Chikitsak, which is something only he can explain and you can judge for yourself, because I have known him for quite some time and I'm mesmerized by his simple presence. He has given many lectures, thousands of lectures. He writes regularly in Marathi newspapers, Lok Satta, Lokmat. His interviews are available on YouTube. If you would like to know more about Dr. Velankar, I'm sure you can find tons of information about him. So I don't want to show, a candle to the sun. So I won't do that. I will just let you enjoy what he has to say after I have said what I want to say. So we want to save the best for the last. All right. So let me talk a bit about how we go about purifying our diet, which can help in purifying or clarifying our perception. And then we will on our way to realize who we are. Because we all are looking for happiness here, are we not? So at the physical level, happiness means health. At the mental level, happiness means peace, tranquility, a feeling of love, a feeling of being loved. And at the spiritual level, we realize who we are. So once, in my experience, if we purify our diet, we can be led in this direction, or we can go in this direction. In my personal case, I did not even realize how perception became clearer and clearer and clearer. And then I tried to study some theory. So when I'm speaking in front of or in the presence of an Ayurvedic trained Vaidya, I have to be careful about how I say what I say. But the understanding of health, the understanding of how diet purification can lead to excellent health has come to me through diet purification. Okay. Without any extra effort. I am a chemical environmental engineer. So I understand certain fundamental laws of mass balance, energy balance, thermodynamics, process efficiency, all of these things. Based on these principles, I tried to figure out how our body, which is a system, can be run efficiently. So I considered the digestion process as a process. So how do you make the digestion process more efficient? Process efficiency is defined as if you have certain inputs into a process, those inputs must be converted with the least amount of energy input into the products that are desired, not the products that are not desired. See, there are in most processes, there are desired products and there are byproducts. So process efficiency means that the desired products are produced in as much quantity as possible and the byproducts are produced in as little quantity as possible. So if you consider the body's digestion process, it runs on the input of the food, water, and some air we breathe in, right? So all the inputs we provide to the body, they become the inputs for the digestion process. And the digestion process will happen according to nature's laws, and things will be absorbed in the body and things will be discarded. All right. So if you want a pure product, would you not want to use the purest possible ingredients to make that product? So for example, even if we are wanting to make chapati and we get the flour. So if the flour is contaminated with dust, will that chapati be good? No, that flour will have to be pure. Only then the chapati we make using that flour will be good. Therefore, I try to figure out what this body can really absorb efficiently and can convert into the body tissues, body parts, and energy we need to run the body. Okay. Now, I'm also a student of environmental sciences and engineering. So in nature, what happens is no organism will consume anything that is inappropriate for it. For example, carnivores like the lions and the tigers will not eat any grass. On the other hand, the herbivorous animals like the deer and the cow and the rabbit, they will not eat any meat. This is exactly how it is. So they know exactly what to eat, how much to eat, when to eat, except Homo sapiens. We have the choice and therefore we exercise that choice, but unfortunately in the wrong manner. We haven't really understood or figured out what is the best diet for us. In the bookstore, if you go, the largest section is on diet. Even after millions of years of evolution, we have not been able to figure out what the best diet for us is. Okay. So I looked at it a bit more carefully and I said, let me figure out what the best diet for us will be. I said, okay, let me see if I can consume mostly natural food that is available in nature without any processing, assuming that I have no tools, assuming I have no access to fire, assuming I have no access to, even a stick to get the fruit from a tree, right? What will I do? If I was in a jungle without any tools, all I could eat would be the ripe, low hanging fruit. Plus, I could eat some herbs, I could eat some roots, I could eat some leaves, whatever I could get, and I could pluck with my own hands. That's all I could eat. What I tried to do as an experiment, I tried to reduce the quantity of processed food I ate, and I tried to increase the quantity of unprocessed or natural food. Lo and behold, I started feeling better. And I said, in the process of cooking or processing the food, energy input is necessary, which means that the process of feeding our body has become less and less and less energy efficient the more and more and more processing we do. So if we eat food that is closer to nature with the least amount of processing, then the energy efficiency of the feeding process is improved. And in nature, everything is efficient, everything is supremely efficient. So I said, let me see if I can do this experiment and see what happens. Lo and behold, my feeling was so good. My energy level improved, my health improved, my well being improved. I started feeling better and better. My weight was 80 kilograms that came down to 65 within no time. In about 3 or 4 months, it came down to 65. I was much more flexible. The body was much more flexible. I was able to do yogasanas the way I used to do as a teenager or even better. I still do them. So my energy level, my flexibility, my strength, my balance, all of those things improved. My focus improved, my concentration improved. This is where we want to go in today's program. The way I understand it, and I will let Dr. Yash confirm this. When we eat the food is converted into what we call the seven dhatus: rasa, rakta, mamsa, meda, asthi, majja, shukra. These are Sanskrit terms which pertain to all the various different body tissues we have. So rasa is basically the juice we extract out of the food, which gets converted into rakta, means blood, then into muscle, mamsa, then meda means fat tissue, then majja, first the asthi is the bone, and then the bone marrow, majja, and or the nervous system, and then shukra is the reproductive tissue. After this, the subtlest part of the food gets converted into our mind. So whatever we eat ultimately has a very subtle but very profound impact on our mind. So if our food is pure to start with, and if it is converted properly through all these seven dhatus, then our mind becomes more and more and more pure. Our perception becomes clearer. This is something I experienced from within. I had not read any Ayurvedic book. Okay. And then when I understood this principle from Ayurveda, I said, oh, this is my own experience. Then I started wondering, when Charak Maharaj wrote the Ayurvedic text, which library did he go to, for what reference? No, he understood this intuitively. He understood this from his own experience. That's how knowledge is intuitively understood and propagated. Whatever knowledge we get from the book or from somebody else, that we call paroksha jnana, which is something we have learned from somebody else. But what I'm telling you, or what Charak Maharaj might have found out, is aparokshanubhuti, which is intuitive understanding, intuitive experience. I'm not saying that I'm Charak Maharaj, I'm not. I'm just an ordinary environmental engineer. But I'm sharing with you my experience. And then when I read the books, I said, this experience is exactly what the book says. So once I understood this, I started practicing this even more religiously. And for the last more than 3 years, I've been eating mostly natural food, which includes fruits, nuts or seeds, vegetables, and sprouts. So those are the things. Sometimes I will eat cooked food. I try to eat very freshly cooked food, small quantities every now and then, but most of it is natural. So when we eat 80, 90, 95% natural, if you can eat 100% natural, I ate 100% natural food for one full year, just as an experiment, and I felt phenomenally good, phenomenally good. Now, not everybody might be able to do this because they may not have the discipline, and it might not suit their body, to be honest, because Ayurveda will tell you you have to have Agni Sanskar on the food before you eat. That is true if the Agni in my own system is weak. If the Agni in my system is strong, then Agni Sanskar happens in my Jathar. So it is called Jathar Agni. So the food does get Agni Sanskar, but it happens in my body, not outside. But if my Jathar Agni is weak, if my digestive fire is weak, then I must give some Agni Sanskar to the food before I consume it. So these are certain Ayurvedic principles. I should not be talking about them while Dr. Yash is here. But to take us further from here into the realm of mind, I will invite Dr. Yash to come and guide us. Thank you for being here. If you can unmute yourself, that will be great. You have to unmute yourself. Great. Thank you. Now we can hear you.
Thank you for this opportunity, from sir. And what we have told about Ayurveda and Sattva Vajay is very perfect and correct. So first, I will talk about what is Sattva Vajay. So as you have mentioned, Charak Maharaj has mentioned this type of therapy in Ayurveda in his Sanhita. So he has mentioned 3 types of therapies. What you know as a Vaidya, they do Yukti Vyapashraya. Another second therapy is Daiva Vyapashraya, that is Jyotish, Kundali. So what we can, it is similar to healing therapy in this place. So Daiva Vyapashraya is similar to Reiki or pranic healing. And third is Sattva-Vajay, it is similar to psychotherapy. So I am practicing as a Sattva-Vajay Chikitsa, means I am practicing as a psychotherapist. And what you have mentioned about diet is also important in psychotherapy in Sattva-Vajay Chikitsa, because the definition of Sattva-Vajay Chikitsa done by Charak Maharaj is ahitebhyo arthebhyo mano nigraha. That means you have to regulate your mind to regulate your behavior. So in behavior, everything will, we can include everything in behavior, eating, exercise, and your everyday behavior. So what is ahitakari? We should control it. And that controlling ahitakari artha, that can be a fast food is ahitakari artha. So if I control that I will not eat fast food, then I am practicing Sattva-Vajaya. So Sattva-Vajaya means we have Sattva, Raja and Tama, 3 guna. So when there is increase in Rajo guna or Tamo guna, some mental disturbance is happening. So I can increase Sattva, and that then I can overcome those mental disturbance like anxiety or depression or emotional disorder. So Sattva-Vajay Chikitsa is a psychotherapy for emotional disorder. Now, in Sattva-Vajay Chikitsa, we mainly use meditation, that means dhyana or attention training, as a tool. And as Charak Maharaj has told that dhyana is important in Sattva-Vajay Chikitsa. Now, in neuroscience also doing research on meditation and what is happening in our brain when we are paying attention in a certain way. So I will describe those changes in our brain briefly, because this subject is very large. We can just give introduction today. So are you sharing this screen, Dr. Vikram?
Yes, the screen is being shared as of now. So I think
No,
everybody should be
PPT.
able to see the screen, not just us.
Yeah, we can see the screen. I think we need to move to the next slide.
Okay.
So can you show slides?
Yes.
Yes.
Can you see the
Okay,
screen now?
so,
Yes. Great. Go ahead.
great. So this is the part in our brain, in our prefrontal cortex, that is the frontal area of brain. It is called dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, and it is named as attention center. So whenever I pay attention, this center is active. And when I am not paying attention, so my attention is wandering in thoughts, this center is not active. Now, when my mind is wandering, these parts in our brain are active. So I will describe what are these different parts. So when I have daydreaming, or I have some memories about past. So I am not paying attention to present moment. My mind is wandering in thoughts. These different parts in our brain are active. So as there are many parts, it is named as network. So scientists named it as default mode network. In 2001, Raisul is the one scientist who named this, who coined this term, default mode. Why you use default mode? Because you are familiar with the default mode of computer. When we start computer, it starts in that mode. Similarly, when we wake up from sleep, this network is started in our brain, so it is named as default mode network. And even in during sleep, when we have dreams, this network is active. So thoughts in when we are waking time or in dreaming time, this network is active. And when I pay attention, then that dorsolateral prefrontal cortex is active. So these are two types of attention: wandering attention and paying attention. Now when my attention is wandering, what is happening in my mind? So these are different parts. You can see amygdala, that is in blue color. It is a emotional center and basically danger center. It is always screening, is there anything dangerous inside or outside, and it reacts to any danger. And because of that reactions or destructive emotions get created in our mind. So all those destructive emotions are anger, anxiety, fear. All those emotions get created because of reaction of this amygdala. Now you can see the red part, that is hippocampus, that is a memory center. It works like a search engine, and it search different memories, and our all emotions are also connected with our memories. So you can recall those things which are more emotional, and because those two parts are very connected to each other. Then you can see a yellow part, PCC. It is named as posterior cingulate cortex, and its function is thoughts about me, my, and myself. So whenever I have thoughts about my identity, my nation, my country, this posterior cingulate cortex is active. And you can experience that whenever your mind is wandering, you have thoughts about yourself. And that's why that posterior cingulate cortex, the yellow part in this picture, is active. And another part is in prefrontal cortex in green area, that is medio prefrontal cortex. It is responsible for our abstract thinking. So all others animal can don't have abstract thinking. They are always in present moment. But we can think about future and plan according to it. So whenever our mind is wandering, we have thoughts about future, then this medio prefrontal cortex is active. Whenever I have thoughts about past, that is memories, hippocampus is active. So in general, when my mind is wandering, this default mode network is active. And now what is importance of meditation? Meditation is paying attention. So when I pay attention to anything external or on my body or to my thoughts, I give raise to this default mode network. And today we have too many clients about emotional disorders. One reason for it is we are not giving raise to our default mode network, because we are doing a laser, very limited work, manual work by our body. We are doing mainly brain work, and whenever I am thinking, I am planning, some part of default mode network is active. So animals attention, it's always in present moment. They can't think about future. They can do activity for the future, but those are based on instinct. They can't think why they are doing, so they don't have a intention behind those activities, and their attention is always in present moment. But our attention is always wandering in past and future. So meditation is paying attention to present moment. We can practice it again and again to pay attention to present moment. So there are different options where we can pay attention. First is external. So there is a trataka. You can pay attention to a flame in front of you, or you can pay attention to a specific point, colored point in front of you. Whenever your mind is wandering and you notice that your mind is wandering, again you can pay attention to that selected object. When you do it again and again, you are giving exercise to attention center in your brain. And now neuroscience has confirmed that this practice will improve neurogenesis in dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. So new cells get formed and connections in between different cells get increased because of this practice. And so because of this practice, we can reduce our distractions and improve our attention span as well as concentration. So that is first most important thing of meditation, paying attention to a selected object. Now next thing is, we can increase our emotional intelligence by meditation. And for that, we have to pay attention to our body and observe what is happening in our body, in our chest, in abdomen, and accept what is happening in our body. When we accept what is happening in our body, in ancient in Ayurveda or in treatise also, it is described as Sakshi Dhyan, what is named in English now as mindfulness meditation. So we give training to amygdala that not to react to every trivial stimulus. And in this way, we are reducing the reaction of that amygdala and can reduce all shat vikar, kama, krodha, lobha, moha, mada, matsara. So our forefather were using it to as a tool to self-realization, to reduce all shad vikara. But we can use it today as to improve our emotional intelligence, because all these destructive emotions are causing very problem in our day-to-day life. So we can use this Sakshi Dhyana to improve our emotional intelligence. So this is some brief information about what is meditation. There are many different types of meditation. So another type is compassion meditation, visualization, but we will not speak today about it. Today we will experience these two types of meditations. So focus meditation, that is paying attention to your breath, and then Sakshi Dhyan. So I request all participants to have experience of these two types of meditations. Have a relaxed seat, close your eyes, and keep your one hand on chest and another on abdomen. Just I have kept my hands. Close your eyes and try to notice movement of those hands. So movement of chest or abdomen with your natural breathing. Breath is going inside, going outside. And you are noticing the movement of your chest or abdomen. Now notice when breath is going inside, notice that inhalation. Notice when it is going outside. And count it as a one cycle. Now you will practice it for next 30 seconds. I will give instruction at the start to count breath. So I will count 30 seconds and you can keep your entire 100% attention on breath movement. And count number of cycles, inhalation and exhalation. So after one inhalation and exhalation, count 1. For next cycle, count 2. Pay your attention on natural breath movement and start counting. Breath is going inside, going outside. Good. You may open your eyes. So you can do this exercise 4 or 5 times in a day. So the number of breaths you have counted now, you can count those number of breaths. So you will practice it for 30 or 40 seconds. And when you notice the breath, you are giving a raise to your default mode network. And it will energize you, because whenever any part is working continuously, it becomes there is a fatigue to that part. So we have mental fatigue when we are continuously thinking or doing brain work. So this is a simple exercise we teach in our Sattva Vajay Chikitsa, that pay attention to your natural breath movement for 30 seconds for 3 to 4 times in a day. So it will improve your energy level. When you practice it for more time, for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, your mind will wander. You were 100% concentration will not be on breath, and wandering mind is natural and obvious. When you observe that your mind is wandering, again shift your attention to breath movement. Do it again and again. So as we do dumbbell exercise, our bicep get developed. Similarly, when we pay attention again and again, that attention center get developed, and we can improve our attention span as well as our focus, and we can reduce our distractions. So that is first type of meditation, concentrative meditation. Now we will practice second type of meditations, the meditation that is Sakshi Dhyan. That is, you will observe your body as a Sakshi, as a Drashta, as a third person. So you will not react to any body sensation as bad, because you are not body. You are observing self. So if there is any itching, you will try to observe that there is itching in leg, and try to accept it as much as possible. If it is unacceptable, unbearable, then you can scratch, but with awareness. So for next 7 minutes, you will try to stabilize your body. You will not move unconsciously without any awareness. So have a relaxed seat. Close your eyes. Keep your hands on your knees and try to shift attention as per my instructions. So pay attention to my instructions as well as to your body. Pay attention to external sounds. Now shift your attention to your chest or abdomen region, where you can notice breath movement. So breath is going inside, going outside, and you are noticing it. Now try to notice, is there any other sensation in your chest region in this movement? Breath movement is one sensation, but is there anything, another sensation in chest, like burning, heaviness, palpitation, pain, itching? Just be curious what is happening in chest region in this moment. Spread your attention to entire chest region. And if you notice any sensation, don't react to it as bad. Observe it as a sakshi, as a third person, where it is and where it is not. Now shift your attention to abdomen. Can you notice any sensation, bloating, burning, pain, itching? Now pay attention to your right leg. Can you notice touch of your hand at your knee? Can you notice different touch points in your right leg? And is there any other sensation other than touch in your right leg in this moment? Pain, itching. Now shift your attention to your left leg. Notice the touch of your hand on your knee. If your sole is touching to floor, notice that touch. And notice, is there any other sensation in left leg in this moment? If there is any sensation, just accept it. Don't react to it as bad. Your mind will wander, that is obvious, natural. When you notice that mind is wandering, just accept it. Don't react to your mind wandering also. Accept mind is wandering. Okay, and again shift attention to your body. Now pay attention to lower waist. Is there anywhere pain? Now pay attention to entire back region of your body, from lower waist to neck. Can you notice touch of cloth or back up to your chair? Is there any other sensation in your back region? Now shift your attention to neck and throat. Is there any sensation in throat? Dryness, itching? Now shift your attention to right shoulder, right arm, elbow, forearm, and palm. Can you notice touch at palm? Is there any other sensation in your right hand? Now shift your attention to your left hand, left shoulder, arm, elbow, wrist, and palm. Notice touch sensations. Now shift your attention to your face region. Chin, cheek, ears, near eyes, forehead. Is there anywhere itching or are muscle tensed? Just observe what is happening in your face region. Can you notice touch of weather? Is it cold or warm? Now try to focus your attention below the nostrils, over the upper lip. Can you notice any sensation there? Breath is going inside, going outside. Can you notice touch of breath while going inside or outside? Focus your attention there. If you can notice sensation of breath, good. If you can't notice, then also good. Don't react to anything. Now shift your attention to your head. Is there any sensation? Heaviness, pain, itching? Try to focus your attention at crown of your head, in 1 inch diameter circle. Most highest part of your body. Is there any sensations in that circle? This is focus attention on a small area on your head. Now try to spread your attention to entire body. It is an open awareness of entire body from crown to toes. What is happening in your body in this moment? Can you notice different touch points? Can you notice different sensations in your body because of sitting? Is there anywhere pain, itching? If there are any sensations, accept it as a sakshi. Your mind will wander. Pay attention to your attention. Where is your mind wandering? Notice what are different thoughts in your mind. Don't react to any thought as negative or positive. Accept that in this moment, this is a thought in my mind. And is that thought creating any emotion? Do you have any emotion in this moment? Are you feeling calm or boring or irritating? Accept that emotion also, that in this moment, mind is having anger or irritation. Sakshi Dhyan is paying attention to your body and mind and accepting what is happening in this moment. By this regular practice, you can observe interaction between your mind and body. Specific thoughts create specific sensations in your body. Specific sensations can create specific thoughts and emotions in your mind. So according to yoga and Ayurveda, mind and body are always connected. It is a mind-body complex. And they are always having effects on each other. You can observe what is happening in your body as well as in your mind and accept it as a third person, because you are not only body and mind, you are also observing self, Sakshi Bhava. Now Pay attention to again your position of your body. Where is your neck? Now touch your both palms to each other. Feel that touch. Rub them gently. Place them on your face, on your eyes. Notice that touch. And open your eyes slowly. Thank you. So we have practiced two types of meditations in today's sessions. We use it in our psychotherapy as a tool because this Sakshi Dhyan has impact on amygdala, that emotional brain. When anyone has anxiety, phobia, panic attack, obsessive compulsive disorder, its amygdala is hypersensitive. And when he or she practices it regularly, that hypersensitivity of amygdala will get reduced and she will get cured from that emotional problem. And that is our therapy. Now you can ask any difficulties or any you can share your thoughts. Thank you for participation.
That was an amazing experience. Thank you, Dr. Velankar, for taking us on this wonderful journey. If anybody has any questions, I would invite participants to raise their hands and I will ask them to unmute. So you can unmute yourself and then ask the question. So Samir, please go ahead.
Good evening, Velankar sir. My question is it true that meditation and pranayam can cure diabetes or and cancer like serious diseases? I would like to know. Thank you.
So I will not claim that only this meditation will cure cancer or diabetes, because those are multifactorial changes happening in our body. But it will certainly help to reduce anxiety and other emotions because of that disease, and it will help to get relief more fast. So only this therapy will it cure those diseases? I will not claim so, but you can practice it along with your medicine, any Ayurvedic or allopathic, what you are taking. You can start this meditation practice to get more benefits from those meditations, from those medicines.
That's a great point, Dr. Velankar. We also think that meditation, yoga, these are tools, these help us, but it is a holistic approach. And therefore, through Sattva, we say that on the one hand, we try to purify our diet, which is the physical input, and meditation, yoga are the subtle inputs to the system. So through meditation, we make sure that we control our thoughts and we are aware of what thoughts we entertain. See, the mind is active, so the thoughts will come and go. But if we don't pay attention to the undesirable thoughts, then they will eventually stop coming and only the desirable thoughts will be entertained. That's how it will end up happening, is how I have experienced in my case. So, Samir, thank you for such a wonderful question. I'm going to ask Mangesh Kashyap to unmute himself and ask the question. Please go ahead, Mangesh.
Yeah, thank you very much, sir. First upon Velankar sir, Jai Shri Krishna, Namaskar.
Namaskar.
What I want to ask, from last 1 month, all our family is passing through very critical phase because all we tested COVID positive and dad was in hospital. Still he is in the hospital, ICU and all these things. And there was a very, very, very high level mental stress, what will happen. And unfortunately, there was some certain calamities generated, and all our life gets somehow missed, even though we are performing sadhana and all everything. Then also what I want to ask Velankar sir, how to maintain peace inside, and how to face this such a difficult phase, because a lot of questions arises in the mind. What will happen to dad? And we are in Pune, and number of patients are increasing very tremendously, and some kind of fear factors are there in our mind. How to face all these things? Please guide us.
Thank you for the question. So you have fear in your mind, that is natural. So accept that fear, that my mind has fear that something bad may happen, and shift your attention to your body and observe what is happening in your body because of that fear, and accept those sensations also. When you have fear, there are some chemical changes in your body because of fight or flight reflex, and those chemical changes will create some body sensation. Now we could not notice these body sensations because we are not paying enough attention to our body. So practice this Sakshi Dhyan, pay as much as possible attention to your body, and whenever your mind is disturbed, pay attention to your body and accept what is happening in your body. It will reduce, it will break down the vicious circle of reaction of your emotional brain and increasing intensity and period of that fear. So you can practice it regularly in any situation, and it will help to improve your immunity as well as to fight back with that virus. So that is the specific practice. Another answer, that when your mind is disturbed, accept it as my mind is disturbed. So make difference between you and your mind. In late term, when I am my mind has anxiety, I named it as I am anxious or I am depressed. So when I speak that I am depressed, I am identifying myself with my mind and body. In Sakshi Dhyan, we have to defuse from our mind as well as our body. And so in spirituality, we always accept that we are Atma. But when we are going through the dangerous situations and when we have fear about the death of this body, we don't recall it. So in Satvavajay Chikitsa, there is one shloka. I will recite it, then you can understand. So that shloka is about Smruti Bhransha. So all your what is fear, all your pain is because of Smruti Bhransha. So what is Smruti Bhransha? Tattvajnane smrutir yasya rajo moha vrutatmana bhrashyate sa smrutir bhransha smartavyaihi smrutau sthitam. So what is Tattvajnan? That I am not only body and mind. It's the Tattvajnan. When you forget this Tattvajnan, that is Smruti Bhransha. So what is mindfulness meditation? What is Sakshi Dhyan? That smartavyahi puna. I am not my body and only my mind. I can observe death of my body also if I practice it till my end of my life. So that is the ultimate end product of this Sakshi Dhyan, that my body is dying, but I am not dying. I am observing death of my body, what is happening in my body at the point of death. So then we will not have fear about death of this body, because body is always changing and we can observe what is happening in our body. Yes.
Thank you so much, Dr. Velankar. That was a great answer. And Mangesh, thank you for asking the question. I'm going to ask Shubhangi to unmute herself and ask her question, please. Shubhangi.
Thank you, Doctor. I want to ask, sir, does meditation help physically challenged persons? Say, I am a physically challenged person. I am mild cerebral hemiparesis. So I have. So can it help me out? Thank you, doctor.
Thank you. It will help you to improve your courage and face that situation. If you can practice it, your energy level will get increased. You can observe what is happening in your body as well as those different thoughts coming in your mind. And when you observe and accept it, the reaction pattern of your brain will get reduced. And because of that reaction pattern, you may have more anxiety or low feeling, and that will get reduced because of this mindfulness Sakshi Dhyan practice.
Next, I think Santosh Nayak wants to ask a question. Santosh, please go ahead.
Santosh,
Hello.
your voice is breaking up.
We cannot.
Hello.
Ah,
You hear me?
go ahead. Now I can listen.
Yeah. No, I have a question for Dr. Vikram. Thank you, doctor, for sharing your experience on natural, consumption of food which you did, and you could reduce your weight. Now, my question is, how much is fasting relevant? Like we observe religious fasting like Ekadashi or Sankashti Chaturthi, or once in a year, the various religious ways of observing fasting, like Shravan month, or in other religions they have Rosa and Lent and other things. So will that also help?
Absolutely. So I'm glad you asked this question. Fasting is much more important than what kind of food we eat. The first principle about eating food is I have to be hungry before I eat. If I eat even the best quantity or quality of food when I'm not hungry, then that food, even the best quality food, even the most sattvic food, will be converted not into the body tissues but into some poisonous substance in the body, because the fire in the belly has not ignited yet. The only reason we should eat, the first, foremost, and the only reason we should eat is I'm hungry. Otherwise, we should not. When will I get hungry? Only if I fast. So unless I have fasted long enough, I will not get really hungry. And unless I get really hungry, I should not eat. That has to be the rule of life. See, I keep telling people, if you follow this one rule in life, only one rule, for 7 days consistently, I shall not eat unless I'm hungry. I have not met anybody who has committed that he would do that, because they say we cannot do that. I said, well, you do this discipline at least for 7 days and then see what happens. Then what to eat, how much to eat, when to eat, all of those will come in your own heart. Will you learn all of these things in your own heart? You won't have to learn from anybody else. So, as I said, the experiment I did was for 3 months, I followed this rule. And then I gradually decreased the amount of processed food and increased the amount of natural food. That's all I did. Thereafter, I visited 3 or 4 different Ayurvedic physicians, and they tested my nadi. And they told me that your nadi is in perfect balance, which means that the kapha, vata, and pitta, the 3 humors we have within our body, these 3 elements are completely in balance with each other. So when we are hungry and only then we eat, then our body is ready to receive the food. After that, if we wait until we get hungry the next time, which means we have fasted between meals, the best fast is every day. So during the day, it has been my experience, if I eat in the morning, say around 9 o'clock or whatever, 9 to 10, that is my breakfast or brunch, then I'm doing my work. If I go out, if I'm doing any physical work, then I get hungry quicker. Otherwise, I'll get hungry later. If I'm just sitting in the office not doing much, if my breakfast has been a bit heavier than normal, then I get hungry around 3 or 4 o'clock. So then that's the time I eat my second meal. So it's a late lunch or an early dinner, whatever you want to call it. Thereafter, I wait until the following morning again. This is called intermittent fasting. If you cannot do that for any reason, or if you don't have enough self-discipline or control on your mind, then our Shastras tell us, every religion tells you that you should fast periodically. Fasting is called tapa. Tapa means literally heating. Okay. It is also to make sure that you are forcing your body and mind to do something which it would normally not do. That is called tapa. It's an austerity. If you do this every day, then you don't have to do Ekadashi and Chaturthi and all those things. Okay. But if you don't, then it is recommended you do at least once in 15 days, you do a really good fast. So ideally, you should stay without anything, only air fast. Some of my friends are here who do only air fast. If you cannot do that, do only water fast. If you cannot do that, do only fruit fast. If you cannot do that, then you do only natural food fast. If you cannot do even that, then you don't do anything. So we have to have some discipline. If we don't have that discipline, then unfortunately, you don't take it personally, because I was in the same boat myself. My rule of eating was, I see food, I eat food. That is how I used to eat. Most of us eat like this because food is available all the time. 50 years ago, 100 years ago, that was not the case. Most of us did not have food available all the time. So we had to do something to get the food onto the table, cook it, and all that, whatever. But these days, packaged food is available. So you go to the market and buy one package and then open the package. That's the worst kind of food you can eat. Okay, the best food for us is what nature gives us without any processing. If we can live on that. So people ask me, do you do Ekadashi? No, I do Ekadashi every day. So I don't even know when the Ekadashi came and went. So that's what intermittent fasting will do to you. I hope you can do this discipline for 7 days. It doesn't matter what you eat. Eat your rice, dal, whatever, but eat only when you're hungry. That is called fasting. All right. Thank you very much. Well, who's next here? I think Jyoti wanted to ask a question. So why don't you ask a question, Jyoti? I'm unmuting you. Please unmute yourself. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Vikram and Dr. Vedankar, for this wonderful lecture today. It was really a mind opener. Now, my question to Dr. Vedankar is regarding the first type of meditation, which you said that you can do it for 30 to 40 seconds about 3-4 times a day. What about the Sakshi meditation? What is the best time, and how many times per day do you recommend that? And regarding the fear aspect, sometimes there are the real fears which you have in mind, which is logical to the situation. But sometimes because of our maybe spiritual background or a little bit of, probe into the matter, we do also have an imaginary fear, which most likely can happen. And at that time, the mind reacts differently. So how do we handle that? And the imaginary fear is not out of the blue, like it can happen. And sometimes there's a confusion of how to handle it. And how does Sakshi meditation help that part?
Thank you. Thank
Thank
you for this. So, Sakshi Dhyan, you can practice it daily for minimum 10 minutes. Whenever you have a time, not necessary that you should do it in Brahma Muhurta. You can practice it anywhere, anytime for 10 minutes. You can increase that time if you practice it regularly. And another recommendation is only practicing 10, 20 or 40 minutes one times in a day is not sufficient. You can practice it whenever your mind is disturbed because of anything, imaginary or actual fear, any danger. Whenever mind is disturbed, you can shift your attention to your body, observe what is happening in your body and accept it. You will realize that intensity period of that disturbed mind will get reduced. You will come to a normal peace mode very earlier. So there are those two practices you can do throughout a day. One is 10 to 15 minutes sitting meditation, and another is you can shift your attention to your body, whenever your mind is disturbed. And when you can do it, applaud yourself, because you are changing pattern of your brain. Till now it is in the thinking mode, but now you are changing to observing mode. So that is most important change in your behavior. Now your another question is, when you have any type of fear or any thoughts, you have to ask yourself, in this moment, I am thinking deliberately, or I have popping up thoughts. So our thinking process is of two types. Sometimes we think deliberately, and most of the time thoughts pop up in our mind. So when you are thinking deliberately, try to think, do it rational with the rational mind. If you can stop it, this is not time to think it. You can stop if you are thinking. But if you are not thinking and thoughts are coming up, popping up in your mind, it is unconscious process. It is difficult to control those automatic thoughts in your mind. Then here also you can use that observing self, that you can observe those thoughts, that those thoughts are coming in my mind because of my culture, because of my upbringing. Okay, is this thought useful or useless? If that thought is useful, give importance to that thought. If that is useless, neglect that thought. Don't give importance to that thought, what is popping up in your mind. So in that way, you can reduce trouble of those thoughts, maybe any type of thoughts coming in your mind.
That was a wonderful answer. Thank you, Dr. Velankar.
Thank you very much.
Add one, what you have answered, Dr. Vikram. You have given a wonderful answer about that diet, but I will give you a technical term that is called ama. In Ayurveda, it is named as ama. Whenever you eat, when you are not hungry, you are not creating those sapta dhatus, but you are creating that ama, and ama is the culprit of all diseases.
Correct.
So,
correct.
And to stop your overeating, you have to practice this meditation, because that is a ahitebhyo arthebhyo manonigraha. Because many people are doing overeating to reduce their stress. They are no aware that they are under stress, but they want to get away from those thoughts, and they use food as a tool to get away from their thoughts in their mind.
Okay, so I'll take this a bit further, one step further. So let's see, the reason we have any kind of fear is because there is a sense of otherness. Tell me if you are completely sure and if you know that you are alone somewhere. Okay, there is nobody else. Will you be afraid? You will not be afraid. Fear is always of the other. And fear is caused because of a sense of otherness. Now, in the next 2 minutes, I will explain to you in very scientific terms how there is absolutely nobody here other than yourself. Now, you have seen me and you have seen Dr. Velankar. You are looking at your screen, isn't it? How are you experiencing that you are seeing me? You are seeing a shape on the screen, and within that shape, you are seeing certain colors. Those shapes and colors are creating an impression in your own eyes. Incidentally, that impression is inverted. It's an inverted image. Okay? That inverted image goes somewhere in the brain and it gets rearranged, and you get the impression that there is an image that looks like a face in front of you on your screen. When do you do that, or when do you know that? You know that only when the impression in your mind is read by your mind. Unless that is read, the picture in front of you doesn't really get experienced by you. Do you understand this? Even if I'm talking to you, if you close your eyes, then you will not see me. That impression will disappear because your eyes are closed. You see what I'm saying? So even
Yes.
though the world appears to us to be outside, we don't really experience it unless its impression is created on our own mind. Therefore, this entire world as it appears to be outside, the entire world experienced through our five senses. See, right now, two of your senses are active. One is your sense of sight and one is your sense of hearing. So you are both seeing me and hearing me is what you think, is what you are experiencing. Although I'm sitting in America and talking to you, you are experiencing that within yourself. So even though the world is experienced as being outside, it is actually experienced within us. In other words, the experience within me and the appearance of the world outside are mirror images of each other. In other words, you see, you cannot really do anything to the world. Right now, do you have any control over what I will do? You have no control. We have no control over the world, but we have control over our own mind. How we will arrange those images, what kind of images we will entertain, what kind of images we will see. For example, when you go for a walk in the morning, your eyes will see many people, but your mind will not register. So when you come home, you will not remember anybody, right? So although your eyes had seen all these impressions or all these things or all these people, you don't remember anything because you did not pay attention to it, which means that only those things to which you pay attention will create an impression in your mind. Through meditation, we learn which things to pay importance to and which things to ignore. When we do that, and gradually we understand that this world is not outside, the world is completely within us. Then we start rearranging what is within us and forget about what is outside. Magically, when we rearrange and organize and properly keep everything in our mind, when our mind is clear and pure, then the world outside becomes very pure and very clear, and we have absolutely no fear of it at all. Because we understand that this world which we are experiencing as being outside is actually a mirror image of our own mind. So there is nothing to fear. Will you fear a mirror image? No. That's the learning that dawns, or that's the understanding that dawns within our own heart once we purify our mind. And to purify the mind, the first step, the grossest step everybody can take is to purify the diet through intermittent fasting. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Vikram.
You're most welcome.
I'm blessed. I'm blessed to have known both of you.
Thank you very much. Vasekar sir, we are going to take your comment at the very end because your comment is going to be very good, and I'm going to wait until everybody has asked questions. So please don't go away. I'm going to unmute Preeti Ramakrishnan. If Preeti can unmute herself and ask the question, would be great. Preeti, please.
Thanks a lot, sir, Dr. Yash and Dr. Vikram, sir, for a wonderful session. There is a great impact of what we eat on our brain and our mind. So, and kids are in developing stage. So my question is, what do you advise for kids in terms of food habits?
So my answer is, for kids below 18, there are no rules. They know what to do. They are in the growing stage, so let them do whatever they want because their bodies are growing. They will be able to digest almost everything. And they will also be able to get rid of toxins from their body without too much trouble. So if they eat home cooked, homemade, fresh food most of the time, they'll be healthy, and they will eat only when they are hungry. Let them, don't force them to eat because it is time to eat. Let them choose when they want to eat. So when they are hungry, they will eat. That's what I would do. Dr. Velankar, would you like to add to this, please?
Yes, I will add that I met many kids who have not experienced hunger in their body. So let them experience the hunger, let them experience the sensation of hunger. Don't feed too much to them. That is the main problem, that parents are feeding too much food as well as information to them. So stop that.
Correct. Thank you so much, Dr. Velankar. We'll see Devesh Bhai. Devesh Desai wants to ask a question. Can you please unmute yourself?
Sairam to all of you.
Sairam.
I'm very happy. I joined little late because of this wave of corona and all. Dr. Vikram and Dr. Yashwant Velankar. How much time do I have to talk? Can I talk for 5 minutes, 7 minutes? I want to share the things which many people will be having in their minds. So
if you can do it in a couple of minutes, I think that will be good. Don't take too long, because we are already way over our time. But because there are interesting questions, we are still allowing people to ask questions. Go ahead, please.
I won't take more than 3 minutes, sir. Yeah. So the thing that what I feel is the spirituality has become the forgotten entity. I am the fortunate one to attend the Chinmay Mission discourses for 22 years. At the end, like majority of us, I thought that these are all the bouncers and these are all the Yorkers, which I can't face, but that was wrong. And then I came in the vicinity to be with the Sai. When he was there in the physical form, I hardly understood anything. And then once he departed in 2011, I am fortunate enough to be with him. And what I realized is that primary level we have missed, and we directly jump into the secondary and the PhD level. The thing is that Yashwant sir nicely said that when your mind is wavering, you do the dhyan and meditation. But what science is telling me is, when we have the wavering of the mind, we are very happy, we are very blissful when our faith in the God is 100%. So rather than doing all these things, we all are doctors, we have learned so many things, meditations, asanas and everything. But our faith in the God has to be like Hanuman. Our faith in the God has to be like Tukaram. When my faith is 100%, I am blissful. When it comes down to 2%, when it is 98, I take help of somebody and I ask, "Arey ye hoga kya? Train time pe aayegi ki nahi?" Then when it comes down to 95, I become irritated. And then when it goes down to 85, I become angry. There's still 1 minute to go. So God tells me, don't let it go up to 70. Then you will be so much depressed. Then you will not understand even I come into front of you in a physical form. So our faith has to be like Hanuman or Tukaram, so that we understand and comprehend the life. My father only just said one thing: there are two functions of the tongue. One is to talk and one is to eat. There are no wars, no battles happened without talking. And there are no diseases can happen without eating a lot. This means a lot. This means a lot. I think I should not take much time because I have my own
Great.
channel.
So that was a phenomenal summary of your experience and your learning. We really enjoyed that. I think that was great.
So, sir, I think Seema had a question. She had raised her hand and she messaged. Seema, are you there? Do you want to ask your question?
Can you unmute Seema, please?
Yeah. First, can you hear me, sir?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah. First of all, pranam, as you both are gurus at Guru's place today, and thanks a lot in advance. I just wanted to go for two questions. One for Vikram, sir. As you said, eat when you are hungry. It is very right. But if the morning and afternoon cycle is late, then definitely our dinner is late. Does it have any wrong impact? Because we have heard since our childhood that you have to eat to the earliest, at least dinner. So I would like to.
So let me stop you there. I will answer this question.
Yeah. Okay.
So the rule is, I will eat only when I'm hungry. Okay.
Yeah.
So if I eat twice already, say if I eat my breakfast around 7, 8, 9 o'clock, whenever I'm ready to eat breakfast, I eat my breakfast. Then I have to wait until I eat my lunch. If I'm not hungry at lunchtime, then I have to wait until I get hungry. That is when I eat my lunch. Okay. And then who has told us that we have to eat dinner? If we don't get hungry until next morning, don't eat. Who is stopping you? So eating more than twice a day for most people on a sedentary lifestyle is not necessary at all. So in my
Okay,
case,
but
I eat only twice a day for a long time. For 3 or 4 months, I actually ate only once a day and let the body go through that tapas. Only one meal a day. But then what happened is, then I started thinking that I eat only once a day. I'm better than everybody else. I have become a yogi now.
yeah,
That
yeah,
kind of
feeling.
attitude is complete nonsense. So when I
Okay,
observed that that attitude was in my mind, then I said, this is actually nonsense. I am
okay,
unnecessarily putting my body through pain. There is no need. So when the body demands food, we should give it
okay,
food. In fact, that's what Dr. Velankar would say. Ayurveda says that when you are hungry, you must eat.
okay,
Otherwise, the body will eat itself. So therefore, it may be
okay,
necessary for us to let the body eat itself, which means autophagy.
okay.
When somebody gets a Nobel Prize on that concept, then we understand that, we had been doing this upavas since thousands and tens of thousands of
Yeah,
years, right?
mm, yeah,
That is why intermittent fasting means Durvas Muni fast. Durvas Muni fast means don't eat until you are hungry.
okay,
You can eat whatever you want, but so therefore we don't say that you must eat this or you must not eat this, or we don't hate people who eat meat or whatever. No, we don't hate anybody. People eat
okay,
whatever they like, or people eat whatever they are used to, people eat whatever is available. For some people there may be no choice.
yeah,
So the person who has no choice, he is going to eat whatever is available in front of him when he's hungry. So it's okay, we understand. But all we are saying is we should not eat unless we are hungry. Because if we eat when we are not hungry, then as Dr. Velankar told you, the scientific name is Amavish, which is a toxin produced in the body even by eating the best quality of food when we are not hungry. So
okay.
I have answered your question. Now you can ask your question to Dr. Velankar, please.
Uh, okay, sir, in this body scan, sometimes it happens that when we are concentrating on chest, we have no issues in chest. But when we shift to the leg or any other part, we feel actions in our chest. So should we observe our chest without reaction, or should we keep our mind on our leg only? Uh, so I'm not able to hear you.
Dr. Velankar, can you please unmute yourself?
I raised my hand. How do you do Agni Sanskar?
Can you listen me now?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So whenever you are practicing body scan and you are paying attention to your leg and something happening in your chest, so here you can notice two types of your attention. When you notice something happening in your chest, your attention is going there. That is unconscious process. Good. Now observe what is happening in chest and accept it. Don't react to it as a bad or good. And again pay your attention to your legs. So then you are practicing again paying attention. So in this practice, you can experience these both types of attentions. Whenever there is a more intense sensation in our body, our mind will wander there. That is natural and obvious. That is the purpose of pain in our body, to attract attention. So your mind will go there. Okay, accept that sensation, but again pay attention when you were before that mind wandering. So when you are paying attention to your leg, again pay attention to your leg and observe what is happening in your leg. So this, in 10 minutes, you may have to do this practice for 100 times, no problem. Pay attention as per your wish, as well as observe where your attention is wandering.
That's a great answer. Thank you, Dr. Velankar. Is Jyoti wanting to ask a question once again? I will.
Let's give opportunity to Giraj since
Yeah, let's Jyoti, why don't you wait, because you have already asked a question. We are going to let somebody else. Giriraj, I think he has been waiting to ask a question. So let's unmute. Go ahead, please, Giriraj.
Hello, Dr. Vikram. It's been
Namaste.
great connecting with you.
You are welcome.
Hello.
What is your question, please?
So my question is just that I was into the intermittent fasting of late, around an year back, but hello. I'm
Go
sorry,
ahead, please. I think you got
got a
muted by accident. So why don't you finish your question, please? Thank you.
Right. So I'm saying that I got into the intermittent fasting of late, and then later on, after like certain 2-3 months, I lost a 10 kgs weight. That intermittent fasting again, get back to my routine of waking up at 6 a.m. in the morning, I am not able to follow it up, and I'm not able to rewire my brain to get back to the same schedule. I'm just, postponing it by a day every day.
You see,
Hello.
that is precisely why we have a 90-day program in which we understand and we learn the discipline of intermittent fasting. I would very strongly encourage you to join the program, because in 90 days, we can really transform ourselves. We can transform our lifestyle. We can have a healthy lifestyle, and that you can continue throughout your life without any aid. So initially training is required. So for that training, you are most welcome to join. You can send me a WhatsApp message or send Pooja a WhatsApp message and learn more about what we do. Or you can go to www.sattv.life, sattva.life, SATTV. There is no A at the end of SATTVA. It's not SATTVA. It's sattv.life, life. So go ahead and find out what we do. You're most welcome to join. I think you will benefit greatly. The people who have undergone this training with us, they have become very healthy. They have had a phenomenal experience of life. You can see all the testimonials of the people on the website and see if you would like to be a part of this wonderful journey. You would be most welcome. So thank you so much for participating and asking this question. I'm going to try to unmute either Sasmita or Durga. I don't know who is here. So go ahead, please.
Yeah, this is Durga. Thank you, Dr. Vikram. Actually, I wanted to ask about meditation.
So this is
of
for
course,
Dr.
like,
Velankar. If you can answer the question of Durga Mishra, please,
Yes,
for me.
Yeah, so on the meditation, I have been practicing meditation several times a day, and I had like different experiences like after I do deep meditation. So I wanted to know so when I go really deep and I start hearing all the sounds inside my body, right? Is that something which is common or uncommon? I should be hearing those, or like I start hearing my heartbeats, I start hearing my blood circulations, everything, like all the sounds which come inside from out. So all the outside sound stops. Is that a common thing, or what is the nature of it?
Yes, congratulations. You can pay attention to those sounds, so what is happening in your body, but don't expect that you should have those sensations again and again, or don't hate them, that it should not happen. So observe and accept what is happening in your body. That is meditation.
Thank you so much, Dr. Velankar. That was a great question. I'll let Jyoti ask her final question, and then after that we'll take Mr. Vasekar, then we'll close the program. Jyoti, can you please unmute yourself?
Thank you, Dr. Vikram, for giving me a chance. Coming back to you regarding the Agni Sanskar, which you said, and when you told about the fasting, about Jathar Agni, and most of the time the Agni is there, but sometimes the digestion does not work well. And you spoke about Agni Sanskar. So you said you have to do Agni Sanskar. Can you little bit throw light on that and elaborate what is Agni Sanskar and how what you meant?
Okay, can I ask Dr. Velankar to educate us on this, because this is an Ayurvedic principle. So I don't feel like talking in front of Dr. Velankar, who's a trained Ayurvedic physician. I'm not.
Sorry, you can give answer as per your experience. If I can add something from Ayurveda science, I will add it.
Okay, so I'm just going by the word the way it means in Sanskrit. Sanskar or prakriya. Okay. Prakriya is process, sanskar is processing, is the way I understand it roughly. Okay. So food has to be converted from food into rasa. Okay. So there is a digestive end product of digestion is called rasa in Ayurveda. Okay. So that every transformation from anna to rasa, rakta, mamsa, meda, asti, majja, shukra, all of these transformations happen because of the fire principle. Okay. Movement happens because of the air or the vayu principle in the body. Food is the prithvi principle that we eat. Our gross body is the prithvi tattva. And the liquid material within the body is the water principle. You see, all of these elements, the earth principle, the water principle, the fire principle, and the air principle are held or housed in the Akasha principle. All of these have to be in balance. Okay. If they are not in balance, then something or the other will happen. Within the body, there will be some imbalance. Imbalance will manifest itself in a disease. Agni is the principle that converts food into all of these different dhatus. If that is not strong, there are many kinds of Agnis. Jathara Agni is only the first and the grossest kind of Agni we know. Unfortunately, even that Agni is not strong enough in most of the people. Forget about the other Agnis. See, if you add wrong kind of fuel to any Agni, what will happen? Or too much fuel before the Agni is actually strong. Then there will be a lot of smoke. That's what will happen. So I'm sure you would have seen the how do we get the sigdi started. So initially we have some pieces of paper and then very small twigs, we light them. And then when there is a fire, then we add smaller pieces of wood or charcoal, and then we add larger pieces of charcoal and then we fan it. Then the sigdi or the charcoal oven will start igniting. That's how we do it. So in our case, if the fire is weak, why is the fire weak? Because before the fire was strong enough, we have poured fuel on it. Then the Agni unfortunately died. That is the problem we have, most of us have, isn't it? So how do we fix it? See, as long as you're breathing, there is hope for everybody. So through the technique of pranayam, we can increase the Agni in the body. Once the Agni is increased, when you feel hungry, then you add a little bit of food that is easy to digest. So initially, forget about raw food and all that. Okay, natural food. Eat very finely cooked or very soft rice and mung dal. That is called khichdi. If you can eat very soft rice and khichdi when your digestive fire is very good, you eat that along with desi cow's ghee, or you can have coconut oil if you want. Okay, that will help you increase your digestive fire. Once you do that, once you digest it completely through intermittent fasting thereafter, then you eat another meal. Once your digestive fire is better, then you can eat. See, raw food cannot be eaten by people whose digestive fire is weak. If your pitta is weak and your kapha and the vata are excessive or out of balance, if you eat the raw food, then it will hurt you. So this raw food is not a religion. Okay, raw food or natural food suits me because I eat very little, first of all. And eating like this helps in my spiritual sadhana. So that's why I do that. So I don't expect everybody to do this. Okay. So don't imitate me or don't imitate anybody blindly. You listen to your own body. Food is about the body. So let your body decide what food is appropriate for it, because you will get the experience from within you. So once you build the fire in this manner, then the fire within your belly will do the samskar or the prakriya on the food you eat. That whole process is called Aham Vaishvanaro Bhutva Praninam Deham Ashritaha Pranapana Samayuktha Pachamyannam Chaturvidam. That's the 14th verse in the 15th chapter of the Gita, right? Think of that. And even before that, before we start this whole process, think about the verse in the 6th chapter. Yuktahara Viharasya Yukta Cheshtasya Karmasu Yukta Swapnava Bodhasya Yogo Bhavati Dukhaha. Unfortunately, we have completely forgotten the wisdom we have in our tradition because of false advertising, and we have, assumed that whatever we hear from the TV or read in the books is all true. It's not correct. We should understand these principles from people who have experienced these. Once we understand these principles and implement them in our life and see our own experience, only then you will understand it. Until then, this is only a theory, okay? So I'm talking from my own experience. I've not read Ayurvedic books. That's why I'm again always conscious and afraid to talk in front of somebody like Dr. Velankar. But
So I
as
will add,
he has permitted me that I should talk about my experience, that is why I'm becoming, arrogant, not arrogant, but confident enough to talk about my experience. I don't want to be arrogant ever. I'm just sharing my experience. I'm not a scholar. Dr. Yashwant Velankar, he has seen probably lakhs of patients. So he will, why don't you tell more about this, Dr. Velankar? I'll stop here.
thank you, sir. What you have mentioned is correctly mentioned in Ayurvedic Granthas also. So when there is no enough hunger of fire, we should eat only, they have named it as a manda. That means only water on the cooked rice. So there will not be any physical part of rice in it. It's only water. So when your fire is improved, then you can add some rice part in it. So it is named as peya. So that is in India, that page. In Marathi, they use it as a page. And then third option is what you have mentioned, that dal khichdi. So when your fire is improved, then you can take it as a vilepi. So it is a liquid food, liquid rice. So we can choose food according to our fire, according to our.
Yeah. Okay.
Great, thank you very much. So now we will take one more question from Dr. Savita Bidkar, and then we'll close. I have Mr. Vasekar also. He has been waiting patiently. So thank you, Mr. Vasekar, for waiting. I will ask Savita. Please ask your question, please.
Give me a second.
I just want to ask that in ancient times, like not long back, we had practices of having food like it used to be part mandla and tart and all that proper like what we can say is की जेवणाची वेळ झाली and everything used to be in a proper manner, that we used to serve food one by one, like initially we used to serve the salt and then all other things, and then after that we used to chant the shlokas and all that, and then we used to have food. So I think personally that that process was to increase the fire or ignite the fire in our stomach and prepare the body for accepting the food. So is it true? I just want to ask Dr. Velankar that is it possible, is it okay if we practice such things in nowadays?
Yes, yes. It is recommended to practice this thing, and that what you mentioned, that Bhojana mantra is actually a compassion meditation, paying gratitude to who have created this food, from farmer to who have cooked it. We have forget this compassion, so we have increased our stress. So that is a compassion meditation when you are recalling that Bhojan mantra. So this practice from our ancient time is very useful for physical as well as psychological health.
Great, wonderful. So we have finished our questions. I'm going to unmute Mr. Kishan Vasekar, and the floor is open to you. Very interesting experience, I'm sure. Go ahead, please.
Sri Swami Samartha. I'll just start with my life is long story, but just to summarize, I will tell my one experience and how mantra meditation has been helping me throughout life. Basically,
okay, so if you can, your video is not completely visible. So, okay, now we can see your entire face. Please go ahead.
Okay. So I'll say the 10th chapter, 10th shloka. Tesham Satat Yuktana Bhajata Priti Purvikam Dadami Buddhi Yogam Tam Yan Mahu Yan Pritime. I have experienced this in last 40 years. 1978, I learned transcendental meditation. That time I was working, I'm a chemical engineer basically from IIT. And then I worked in many companies in Reliance and many companies including Darbare, etc. I'm 67 now. In 1982, I met my spiritual guru. That too, of course, it was a predestined thing. And he taught me many mantras. So transcendental meditation, these other meditations and mantra meditation and namasmaran. I turned to namasmaran and mantra meditation in my this last 20 years. And in 2011, I had a heart attack, massive heart attack. I collapsed. Then operation was done, and then after 4 or 5 days, I slightly became, aware of the things what is happening. And then I was told that both kidneys also have failed. That was a bolt from the blue. And then after that, I was also on ventilator for 4 days. I survived all that. I had a visit to heaven. And then in 2019, October, I had a stroke when I was in USA. I have recovered 99% from the stroke also now. So all these I contribute to the integration of Ayurveda, meditation, music, massage, mudra, everything. And mainly it has played a role. My kidney recovery, I want to tell you exactly what has happened in just 5 minutes. After both heart attack and kidneys failed, and the doctors said I was in Asian Heart, the topmost hospital in Mumbai. And the doctors told that kidneys recovery is practically impossible, and you have to take, because heart was very weak. They said nothing can be done except that you have to take dialysis. My daughter is doctor. She came from USA and consulted almost top doctors. One who was treating Shammi Kapoor was also consulted. They said the only best way is to do this. I was aware that time. I came to conscious because operation was done. I was very, very weak and bedridden. So doctor told me that each and every cell and each and every kidney has to be built by brick. And we only hope for the best, but you may have to take dialysis. We do not know throughout life. The chances of recovery are less than 0.1%, they said, 1%. 1 in million they recover. So that time I started praying. I have been praying every time, right from the day I had a heart attack. I am a Swami Samartha Bhakta. In fact, Gajanan Bhaktas, I had many experiences. I will share it sometime. But when the kidneys failed, I recalled that how when they started, dialysis, I came to know that creatine level has gone up to something like 5.3. And then when the dialysis started, I remembered like Hanumanji brought Sanjeevani. So I prayed Hanumanji. I know Hanuman Chalisa. I have written it in Marathi poetic form also. So I started, all family also were praying, and the treatment was going on very well. When the treatment dialysis was being done, I also recalled that I am a chemical engineer, that kidneys are like ultra micro filtration. And when doctor has told me that I knew a bit of nephrons and all that. So I started focusing on my kidneys and visualize that Hanumanji has brought Sanjeevani. I know many mantras, so I recited specific mantra for kidneys and Hanumanji and started feeling that my kidneys are recovering. And then also that time I started, creatine is a poison. So I recalled a Naga mantra. In fact, that Naga mantra was the first mantra I told, Dr. Vikramji. He's my good friend. We met 8 years back in USA. And I told him that mantra, Anantam Vasuki Shesham Padmanabham Cha Kambalam Shankaparam Dhutarashtam Cha Takshakam Kalyam Tatha Yatani Navanagani Naganancha Mahatmanam Sayan Kale Patentam Pratat Kale Visheshta Tasya Vishabhay Nasti Sarvatra Vijay Bhaveta. So I prayed Naga mantra and requested Nagas to take away that poison, creatine as a poison. So after 10 sittings, 10 sittings, my kidneys started recovering. And I visualized that kidneys, I talked to each nephron. As a chemical engineer, I said, please recover, start your filtration. And I prayed Hanumanji and Naga mantra, and all were praying. And treatment was going very well. I had slightly recovered from the heart attack, but the treatment was fantastic. And for 20 days, I didn't pass a single urine. And on 20th day, it was all raining outside in Mumbai, but I had no, I was not raining out. So I first drop of the urine was given, and that doctor said miracle has happened. He actually hugged me. So both kidneys, failed kidneys, recovered after 10 sittings of dialysis. And doctor said that last 2 sittings he extended from 6 hours to 8 hours. He said we never do it, but he told me that you are very positive, and he hugged me. That he says all your prayers, meditation, mantra has helped. So that kidney recovery was something which was looking impossible. But Hanuman Chalisa, there is one, doha, Durgam kaj jagat ke jete sugama anugrah tumare tete. When I was writing in Marathi and English poetic form, I heard his voice and I wrote it like this. Jagi aso karya kathina kiti apara tava krupene sahaj hoile te para. And then in English also I written it. Let the task and mission be impossible. Your blessings make it easy and possible. So Hanumanji, Swami Samartha, Shirdi Sai Baba, and Gajan Maharaj Shegao, and even I had experiences of Mrityunjay mantra. I was literally on deathbed, so I came back from that. And all
this
that
is so wonderful, Kishanji. This
and
is a
so
phenomenal
my kidney
experience.
recovery was ultimate example of how consciousness, meditation, and mantra can help. And particularly, I always say that whenever you're having such things, I say that you give a dose to when you're meditating, you visualize that your dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphins are releasing. In fact, I have developed mantras for each disease and each pain also. But anyway, that is a pattern of practice. And unless you meditate and do it, you won't know it.
Fantastic.
Dhanyavad.
This is really amazing. This is an amazing experience. This is a combination of meditation, Ayurveda, self-discipline, and God's grace, of course.
God's grace is final.
Yes.
Today
So
morning, Swami
thank you so
Samartha-
much.
Anyway, I just want to share 1 minute. Today morning at 3:45, I get up at 3:45 a.m. and my meditation goes on automatically. My mantras throughout the day go on automatically. Today morning, Swami Samartha appeared in my dream and he has given me blessings to all of us that will be Corona Mukht soon.
Fantastic. That is wonderful. That's the best news we can get. So thank you so much, Kishanji, for joining our program and sharing your experience. Any final words, Dr. Velankar?
No. It is wonderful experience to participate in this program. Thank you very much.
Okay, then I will ask Pooja, my sister, to make a formal vote of thanks. Please, Pooja, can you come online and then conclude this program?
Right. Yeah. So I would like to thank Dr. Vikram, Dr. Velankar for this wonderful session. We got an overwhelming response. We got more than 300 registrations. Unfortunately, we could accommodate only 100. We'll share the recording or we might do another session so that others do get an opportunity to join this. But it was an excellent audience, wonderful questions, huge learning experience for me too. And I'll surely try these techniques that we learned today. I think they'll really help in my professional and personal life. So thank you so much, everybody, for being a great audience. And we'll reach out to you soon on our sessions that will come up. So we'll be in touch. And do reach out to us to know more about what we do at Sattva. And we'll be happy to connect with you.
Great. Wonderful. Thank you so much. So I declare this program closed now and we will meet you soon, probably in the next couple of weeks. Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye.